Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're dissecting something that is, frankly, just astonishing. How a major, highly publicized international ceasefire deal—
One championed by a global power.
Exactly. How that deal leads to renewed, fatal clashes within just a few weeks of being signed. It's a complete collapse, and we really need to dig into why.
It really, it highlights the difference between just pausing a conflict and actually solving it, you know?
Hmm.
Our sources are detailing this incredibly rapid escalation between Thailand and Cambodia, all following the breakdown of a truce signed just this past October.
And this was the deal personally overseen by Donald Trump. It looked, at least on paper, like a huge diplomatic win.
It did. But we're finding out that the foundation it was built on was, well, incredibly fragile.
That immediately makes me ask what foundation we're even talking about, because this isn't a new conflict, is it?
Oh, not at all. You're dealing with a centuries-old border dispute, and that means, deeply, deeply entrenched historical grievances.
So to understand why this truce failed so fast, you have to go way back?
Precisely. The whole thing, the root cause, it stems from maps drawn during French colonial rule. Cambodia was part of French Indochina then.
And Thailand's position is what? That the maps are wrong.
That they're inaccurate, yes. Which leads to these really unclear demarcation lines all along the border.
So you've got two nations basically operating off two different versions of history, or at least two different pieces of paper telling them where their country ends.
That's the crux of it. And this ambiguity leaves a whole scattering of really significant sites. We're talking ancient temples with deep cultural importance just lying right along this contested line.
So when the October deal was signed, all of that, the maps, the temples, the actual border, was just ignored.
Sidelined completely.
Yeah.
Not resolved. Which, as you can imagine, is just a recipe for instability.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hmm.
But let's zoom out a bit. What was happening on the ground that forced them to the table in the first place? It must have been pretty severe.
The human cost was immense. The fighting that broke out back in July, just a few months before the ceasefire, was described as the worst fighting on that border in a decade.
A decade. Wow.
It went on for 5 brutal days. We're talking 43 people killed. But what really underscores the humanitarian crisis, 300,000 people were displaced.
300,000.
Forced to flee their homes. I mean, just try to imagine the sheer logistical nightmare, the trauma of moving an entire city's worth of people away from artillery fire. That level of crisis, it just demanded some kind of intervention.
Okay, so that sets the stage. They go to Malaysia in October for the ceasefire. But this wasn't just a friendly handshake, was it? There was some serious muscle behind this.
Oh, absolutely. This was not your standard diplomatic pressure. This was targeted economic leverage.
Applied by the U.S.
By the U.S., yes, with President Trump overseeing the signing. Our sources make it really clear he had previously issued a very credible threat. He said he would withhold crucial trade privileges from both Thailand and Cambodia unless they stopped fighting.
We hear trade privileges thrown around a lot. For our audience, can you break down what that actually means? Why was that threat so powerful?
Well, it's the difference between, say, a slap on the wrist and a potential financial catastrophe for some of their key export sectors.
So this is serious.
Very. We're talking about losing access to something called the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP. If you lose that, your exports suddenly face tariffs, sometimes really high ones, entering the massive U.S. market.
And for countries like Thailand and Cambodia, manufacturing, textiles?
It's huge. That kind of threat is, well, it's almost existential for those industries. Suddenly, stopping the fighting wasn't about national pride. It was about national economic survival.
That completely reframes the whole agreement. It wasn't born from a mutual desire for peace.
It was born from a mutual fear of American tariffs.
So it's no wonder Trump was citing this as proof of his peacemaking skills. He basically forced a timeout with this massive economic hammer.
Exactly. But as we're seeing that time out, that peace, it lasted only as long as the memory of that threat and, until the first spark hit the tinderbox.
Okay, let's get to that spark, to the trigger. We know peace is fragile, but what was the specific incident that just shattered this whole thing?
The first crack appeared this past Monday. A Thai soldier, according to Thai authorities, was on patrol along the border and stepped on a landmine.
Oh, wow.
The initial reports were a little varied, that he lost a foot or maybe his whole lower leg. But the injury was severe, traumatic.
And Thailand's reaction wasn't just to condemn it. They made a political decision right away.
Incredibly swift.
Yeah.
And their response was framed by this one very high-stakes allegation. They immediately blamed Cambodia.
Right.
But the crucial part of that blame was the claim that the landmine was freshly laid.
And that phrasing is so important, isn't it?
It is. By saying it was new, they're framing it not as some tragic accident from old ordinance, but as a deliberate, fresh act of aggression, a violation of the truce. And based on that, Thailand announced it was suspending the terms of the deal.
That claim, freshly laid, it's almost like the political justification they needed to walk away. It lets them say, see, we were keeping the peace and they broke it.
It provides all the political cover they need, yes. It shifts the blame for failure entirely to the other side. And the language from the Thai leadership right after, it was dramatic.
What did they say?
The very next day, on Tuesday, the Thai Prime Minister, Newton Charnvirakul, he visits the frontline troops, and he tells reporters, point blank, today we consider that the deal that we made in order to bring peace is now over.
Is now over. That is unambiguous.
It sends a clear message to everyone on the ground, get ready.
That sounds like a total withdrawal from the deal. Did anyone in the government try to, soften that stance at all?
They attempted some damage control, yeah. I think mostly for the international audience. The Foreign Ministry sent out a spokesperson who clarified that Thailand had only paused the agreement's implementation, not officially withdrawn.
Paused versus over. But on the ground, does that distinction even matter?
It didn't. The result was immediate, renewed hostility.
Right. Because just 2 days after the landmine and after the Prime Minister's announcement, the shooting starts. Gunfire erupts across the border.
It's horrifying how quickly it returns to civilian casualties. The Cambodian government was first to report losses. Prime Minister Hun Manet said 3 civilians were wounded and tragically 1 was killed in Prey Chan.
And their reaction, diplomatically, must have been just as harsh.
Oh, of course. PM Manet said the action goes against the humanitarian spirit in recent agreements. And when you hear the eyewitness accounts, you really get a sense of the terror.
What were people saying?
A Cambodian resident, Hun Manet, was quoted as saying, "They just shot at us. We did nothing. I am so frightened. I am running away now."
We did nothing. I mean, that feeling of shock, for people who must have thought the worst was behind them, it's just palpable.
Her husband was just as frantic. He claimed Thai soldiers fired a lot of shots for about 15 minutes. It doesn't sound like a small skirmish. It sounds like an immediate, concentrated return to fighting.
It just shows how vulnerable civilians are when a conflict can be switched back on like a light.
Now, we have to be impartial here. Did Thailand accept responsibility?
No, absolutely not. We have to look at their counterclaims.
So what was their version of events?
A Thai army spokesperson, Wintai Suvari, said Bangkok blamed Cambodian troops. He alleged that they were the ones who fired shots into Thai territory.
So the deal is broken, people are dead, and both sides are pointing fingers about who shot first. The agreement is effectively dead.
It is. And this brings us right back around to the core of the problem, doesn't it?
The core synthesis, what this all teaches us. Because you had this massive external effort, this presidential mandate with an economic threat behind it, and it worked. For a minute. It created a lull. But the moment that leverage seemed to slip, or the moment one trigger event occurred, the violence was back. Instantly.
So what's the real insight here for international relations?
I mean, what it really boils down to is that the October Agreement was a kind of diplomatic theater built on sand. It was structurally unsound from the start.
Because it never actually fixed the problem.
It did not resolve the underlying basis of the dispute. You can force a pause with tariff threats, but that pause does absolutely nothing to make either side willing to compromise on colonial maps or who owns those contested temples.
So for you, the listener, it really makes you think about how fragile these deals are when they only focus on stopping the violence, rather than doing the hard work of solving the actual dispute.
Exactly. It's like treating a symptom instead of curing the disease. When the foundation of the conflict is still there, these centuries of competing claims, any incident is enough to relight the whole thing. The landmine was the spark, sure, but the unresolved border was the powder keg left sitting wide open.
So to summarize this whole deep dive for you, that U.S. trade threat, it successfully bought some time, a temporary economically motivated peace. But the fatal flaw was that the deal completely sidestepped the core issues, the old maps, the contested border. And because the dispute was permanent, but the peace was temporary, the conflict was just primed to reignite.
Which leaves us with a really important question, and it goes far beyond Southeast Asia. If a peace deal relies only on a powerful external threat, like sanctions, to stop the fighting, and it intentionally avoids the historical root cause, is it really a peace agreement? Or is it just an expensive timeout just waiting for the next spark? And what does that mean for other entrenched border disputes around the world that maybe don't have a superpower willing to step in with that kind of leverage? Something to really mull over.